Cedar Falls Committee of the Whole meeting. Now call this meeting to order.
Excuse me.
Excuse me, Denny wasn't there to yell at me. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Committee of the Whole meeting for September 16th. I will now call this meeting to order. Clerk, roll call, please.
Schultz.
Here.
Latta.
Here.
Cruz.
Here.
Hawbaker.
Here.
Ganfield.
Here.
Crispin. Here. Dunn. Here. All members present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And first item on the agenda is we have an update from you and I with President Mark Nook. Thank you, President Nook.
Thank you, and thanks for the invitation, Mayor Roddick. It's a pleasure to be with you and talk a little bit about the University of Northern Iowa and to be able to partner with this community in so many ways. I've recognized for a long time that it's a very synergistic relationship between the university and this community. You and I wouldn't be what it is without Cedar Falls, the people of Cedar Falls, the local government here. And the city would be a little bit different without the university here as well. So an opportunity to come and give you an update on where we're at and what's going on is really appreciated. So thank you. Let me start by saying, just a quick update on some things that I know you've heard about. And that is our enrollment is up, which is a good thing given that we've been going the wrong way, been going down since really 2010. Even before that, going back to 2000. This year, we're at 9,283 students. We're up 250 from last year. We're up about 2.9%. So it's really great to see that. It's the second year in a row that we're up. It's the first time that's happened since 2010, 2009. So things are headed in the right direction. Want to keep them going that way and growing. Ultimately, I'd like to see the enrollment at this institution closer to 13,000. Be healthier for our community. We've got the facilities for it. We need to continue to grow that enrollment and do the things we can to continue to grow this university. Some other good news in that press release that I know all of you heard about was the four-year graduation rate. While it dipped just a little bit, just below 50% at 49.9%. That's the second highest it's been. But I want to put that number into perspective for you a little bit. There's one of our border states around here that has several institutions just like us. Their average six-year graduation rate is under 50%, is lower than our four-year graduation rate. It says a lot about the commitment of our students to their education, and a great deal about the faculty and staff at the University of Northern Iowa and their commitment to these students' success. Not just commitment to having them on campus and helping them, but to making sure that they're successful. So I'm very appreciative of what the faculty and the staff on our campus do and what this community does to embrace those students, to make sure that they can get done in a timely manner, get into the workforce, and start to help out this community. Our university got together a few years ago and put together a purpose statement. This isn't something that a lot of universities have done. We've had a mission statement for a long time and a vision statement. But a purpose statement is a statement of why we exist, not what we do or what we want to do or how we do it, but why. What's the real purpose? We know we teach, we know we do research, everybody knows that. But why do we do it? And this statement was written by a group of faculty and staff on our campus. It says the purpose of you and I is to enrich lives, communities, and the world through our students, faculty, staff, and alumni. And tonight I think it's important for us to focus on that word communities, enrich communities, through the lives of our students, faculty, and staff. And as you look around our community and you see the number of faculty that we have working in key areas around the community, doing things, volunteering, the number of alums that we have serving on the city council as the mayor, leading businesses, the superintendent of our local schools, the number of teachers that we have, it's clear that our university really is enriching this community, but so many more throughout the state of Iowa. We were recently in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I'm walking through the Haymarket district during their farmers market, and somebody yells out, "Hey, Mark," and it's like, well, what are the odds that's me? And I turn around and look, and yeah, they're saying, "Hey, Mark, come on over." I get over there. I don't recognize these people. But standing behind them is a former presidential scholar whose family is running the caramel booth. Yeah, we bought a few caramels from that booth. But then their son was also in a UNI pep band shirt, having an impact there in Lincoln, Nebraska. Of course, Senator Grassley's having an impact in the nation. And we've had ambassadors from UNI that are having an impact around the world. So it really is a very true, fitting purpose statement for us. There's three other words that go with this, and they're kind of our how statements. One of them is we create. We create an environment where everyone, notice it doesn't say students, it says everyone, can be successful in reaching their academic, their professional, and personal life goals. We create an environment for success. We empower individuals to build lives of purpose, I gotta get it right, build lives of purpose, of community, and responsibility. Right? Again, a commitment to our communities and to being responsible citizens. And finally, we innovate ethical solutions to the problems of our day. We'll talk about each of those just a little bit. When we think about these creating some opportunities, I want to talk a little bit about the nursing program. Many of you were there to help us open that program. Thank you. It really has been wonderful to see the way the community has reacted to us announcing, first of all, that we were going to try to do this and then to make it happen. We opened up that nursing program for the first time this fall. We have 26 students in it at the moment. We'll admit another 80 in the spring in January, and 48 in January, and hope to have 80 in it admitted in the next spring, next fall. After that, we're going to try to admit about 80 per semester to keep this thing rolling and really help alleviate one of the shortages that not just the state has, but our nation has in getting appropriately trained healthcare workers out there. It's been great to watch people respond to this. We've also seen a great response from students. I just found out earlier today that when you look at the number of freshmen coming to the university and you ask them what they want to study, number one is always elementary ed. Number two is always exploring, which means they don't really know what they want to do yet, but they're going to figure it out. Number three is now nursing. And we just started the program, and it's number three. So it is really something that's going to help us grow our enrollment. That means it's going to help us grow this community, and it's going to meet a critical workforce shortage. We also started our first program in engineering this fall, material science engineering, and a material science engineering technology program, which will help that program grow as well and meet a critical need. This was a program that John Deere in particular had asked us about, but several others. And it brings together a synergy between our chemistry programs, our physics programs, and our applied engineering programs in a very unique way to help build a great program for these students. It'll help them move into the foundry fields in particular, but other material science related industries and businesses. We also, as I mentioned, look to improve our communities and enrich the lives of our communities. We've had several awards that our faculty and staff have received lately. I think all of you probably know Randy Pilkington, or at least have heard of his work, the director of our Business and Community Services program. Randy was recently awarded the Grow Cedar Valley Legacy Award for the work that he's done in his many years here at the University of Northern Iowa to help grow the economy of the state and especially of our region. Many of the businesses in this community have used him and his various programs and departments to do business plans for them, to help them lay out long-term strategic plans, tactical plans. It really is great to see him recognized. And Debbie Durham, the governor and director of Iowa Economic Development, was up to present that award because of the work he's done really across the state and in states surrounding the state of Iowa. Nathaniel Bryant, the young man standing behind the computer in the middle of this picture, is an assistant project manager at the University of Northern Iowa's Metal Casting Center and Foundry 4.0 Center. He, in this past spring, was awarded the Technical Achievement Award from the Additive Manufacturing Division of the American Foundry Society. He started his career here as a student in 2013, received his undergraduate degree from UNI, a master's degree from UNI, and is currently working on a doctorate in education from UNI. But he works to design sensors and things that live inside things that are cast in metal so that they can understand when things are starting to break and when they're starting to fail and can report those out. It's really a huge step forward in helping us better understand how the machines work and keeping them up to date. The final picture on the far right is of some of our physics students. Our physics program isn't one that people think about very often. In fact, it's one that many students and people try to avoid as much as possible, which I personally find problematic, being a physics major myself. I love going over to that department. Recently, over the last couple of years, they brought in more than $4 million in outside funding. to fund research, to help pay students to get involved in research while they're undergraduates. It's really important that you learn to do whatever you're studying, learn to do that work and not just understand how to go about it. I've always said that science is something you do, it's not something you know. I like to say science is a verb. Everybody tells me I'm wrong, but if you've ever done science, you know it is something you do. And that does mean it's a verb, right? And the physics department's doing a great job of bringing in outside funding to support these students learning how to do science. A little update on a few of our facilities, and some of these you are very, very aware about. The image on the far left is our applied engineering building, which was originally built in 1976. We're doing about a $44 million upgrade to that, expanding it by 40,000 square feet to make it just a little over 100,000 square feet. And we finished that expansion a year ago, and we're now in the process of renovating the older part of that building and hope to have that completed by early January, maybe early February, and be fully occupying that building then sometime in the beginning of the next semester. But it's great to see the way that's coming along. What really is impressive to a lot of people is the way it's changed the look as you drive along University Avenue. You realize how much is going on south of University that is part of the UNI. And it pairs up so well with the expansion and renovation that's going on with the Gallagher Blue Dorn, which is the next slide, the next image there. The Gallagher Blue Dorn renovation, nearly a $15 million renovation, is on schedule to be finished in January. We are still doing programs in the Gallagher Blue Dorn because we haven't touched the main hall other than to replace some of the seating. The Marquee Lounge will be finished. It'll be great to see that open and to be able to welcome more people into the atrium, be able to have some special events in that theater, be able to do some smaller comedy acts, some jazz combos and things like that without using the big auditorium, but be able to have those in a more intimate setting, perhaps with a lunch, a meal. Also just be able to welcome people in that atmosphere of a Marquee Lounge. Really will improve our concierge services for everyone in the Gallagher Blue Dorn. The Campanile, of course, nearly 100 years old, will turn 100 in 2026. We put the new bells in a little over a year ago. We still want to renovate the plaza around that. That construction will take place next summer. So it should be completed fairly soon, probably by this time next year. And then finally, the dome, we got the new roof on, working hard to start phase 2 as soon as the football season is over. We'll go in and do some work inside. And that, exactly what's going to happen in there, we'll probably have an announcement out in the next couple of weeks of exactly what's going to happen in there as we finalize those plans. I want to talk about Olivia Chambers. This has been a wonderful story for our community. The number of times that Cedar Falls was mentioned on international TV because of this young woman is really remarkable. Olivia Chambers is a swimmer at the University of Northern Iowa and competed as a Paralympian in Paris earlier this month. She competed in a total of 6 events, reached the finals in all of them, is bringing home a gold medal and 2 silvers, the gold medal in the 400-meter freestyle, a silver in the 100-meter breaststroke, and the 200-meter IM. It's amazing to watch her swim. Had the opportunity to watch all of these events, but especially the 400-meter freestyle when she won the gold medal. She was way out ahead. She reaches the end of the pool and hits the side and then looks up and looks both ways and then reacts. She told everyone afterwards she can't see anyone else in the pool. She has no idea whether she's in first place or last place until she touches the wall. And so to see her touch that wall and then look this way and then look this way and just erupt, it brought tears to my eyes. It was such a proud moment for all of us. And them talking about this young woman from Cedar Falls, grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas, goes to school at the University of Northern Iowa. We were one of the few places that gave her a chance to swim after she found out that she was going blind. And so it's just tremendous to be able to celebrate Olivia's achievements. We also had 2 women compete on the track and field team. Erin Kirchhoff ran the 100 meters and finished 7th, and the 400 meters and finished 5th. And then Jessica Himes, who's from Swisher, threw the discus and finished 6th. Both of those are alums. They competed for us. Jessica Himes was competing in her third Paralympics. Erin was competing in her second. And Erin's originally from Solon, so a couple of local women that have done really, really well because of their participation here at the University of Northern Iowa. We've had a great opportunity to partner with the city, with members of the community, and thank you for reaching out to us, especially with the fireworks over the dome. What a great event for our community to be able to come together, to have a space together, and to have a backdrop that's really pretty unique when you think about it, with fireworks over the dome. It was a great event to see that many people out gathering in our community, a wonderful night for that celebration, and just absolutely thrilled to have it on our campus. And hopefully we can coordinate something also with the high school next year with where their football stadium sets. It'd be a great place to watch these fireworks from some of those stands as well. But it's a little too early this year, so hopefully we can get that worked out. And then, of course, Panthers on Parade, an opportunity for local artists to paint up some statues of TC and then spread them around our community. The number of times that I've been driving around and there's been families standing around one of those statues, getting their picture taken. I've talked to people down at the state fair who said, I came up just to see and find them, right? And they weren't UNI alums. They just wanted to come up and see them. And they spent the day touring around the city trying to find each of those statues so that they could have their picture taken with the TC. So it's been a great partnership for all of us, and very proud to be a part of those sorts of things. We've got one coming up that really starts next year. As everyone knows, 2026 is our 150th anniversary, but that means our 150th year starts next fall, September of next fall. We've started to put together some logo treatments to be used with our logo, and this is some examples of some street banners that might be able to go up. But we will celebrate all year long, starting probably in August when we welcome the 150th class next year, especially a large homecoming event next year. But then we'll continue on through the following homecoming when we officially celebrate our 150th birthday, and end the campaign, the Our Tomorrow campaign. The Our Tomorrow campaign is going extremely well. We've raised a little over $280 million already toward our goal of $300 million. We have almost 2 years left to go. I'm really hoping that we exceed that significantly as we continue to raise funds to support our students, to support our faculty and staff, to upgrade some of the facilities that you've been a part of. Thank you for helping us with the Dome in particular, and your moral support on all of these. But then continuing to build these relationships that get more students here, that help us build a stronger community here in the Cedar Valley. We have a special event coming up in October. This is a special guest. I just want to bring your attention to Richard Verma coming. Richard is the COO of the State Department. It's the #2 man at the State Department. He's the son of a UNI alum, and that's why he's coming back. He called us. His father passed away this past March. But his father grew up in India, was married, had a couple of degrees, had a master's degree, and was involved in some of the political things that were going on in the mid-'60s in India, and needed to get out, wanted to get out, and got a Ford Foundation Fellowship to come to the United States to study and get a specialist degree in education at the University of Northern Iowa. He showed up in New York City with $14 that he had borrowed from somebody else and a bus ticket to Cedar Falls. And his son is now the COO of the State Department. And he talks about his time here at Cedar Falls. His father always talked about his time here at Cedar Falls and what that meant to him to be able to get a start. And so Richard Varma wants to come back and share the story of his father, share the story of some of the things that he's done because of what this university and what this community allowed him, his father and mother to do in coming to our country. So he'll be here October 8th to talk a little bit about his background and his father in particular. So with that, let me say thank you. And I'd be happy to take any questions that you have. I know I used up almost all of the time, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about the University of Northern Iowa. Thank you.
Yeah. Open it up to you guys.
I'll throw out a question.
Sure.
On the incoming freshmen, I noticed we're right about the same.
Yes.
Any thoughts on improving that? I mean, we keep them through the career of 4 years of college, so that helps. But I was a little bit surprised. I mean, we're targeting grad students at the moment, but anybody? I mean, what?
Yeah, we are targeting both freshmen and graduate students and transfer students. Those are
I
the
knew
three
that.
new groups, right? And we want all three of those to grow. We put a real effort on graduate students this year, partly because our graduate students were really down. We wanted to get that coming in the right direction as well. We did a fair job with this freshman class in that it's only down a little bit. The important thing is it's bigger than the class that's leaving, right? So that you continue to grow. We made that, but we do want to grow that. You will hear something coming up at the Board of Regents meeting this week. So the Board of Regents meets on Wednesday and Thursday, and one of the things that we're going to have in front of the board is a request for our state appropriation. And in that, we're going to be requesting additional dollars so that we could offer resident tuition to non-residents from states that surround Iowa. If that happens, we should be able to grow fairly rapidly. Now, we've talked to several legislators about this, and what we really want to do is grow the workforce in the state of Iowa. We're doing this not to grow our enrollment. We're doing this because there are 60,000 job openings in this state and 40,000 unemployed people. You can't solve that problem without getting people to move here. For us, 40% of the students that come to UNI from outside of the state of Iowa that graduate from here take their first job here, and they stay more than 10 years. They're exactly what we need. And so a little bit of investment in UNI and helping us bring more of those students into our state helps us solve an economic problem, not an education problem, an economic problem. And that's why we've reached out and said, let's try this, right? Let's see if it can work. We need a little help to do it. But I think it'll be, in the long run, a fairly inexpensive way to recruit people to our state in the long run. So you'll hear a little bit more about that this week. Of course, it'll have to go to the legislature after that. So, but the conversation really will start. You can see it in the board's docket that was made public just this past week. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else?
I was going to ask, if I may, Mr. Nook, you said that the number 3 most popular
Yes.
attention now is nursing. Is that
Yeah.
just for the incoming class that they were asking?
Yeah,
those
that was the
questions
freshmen. You know, as
Yeah.
the freshmen come in, they tell us what they want. It's
Gotcha.
nursing.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Thanks
Yeah.
for clarifying.
You bet.
I loved seeing the new facility. I'm excited for what it's going to be doing for us and hearing about what rates were being paid to traveling nurses and such. I think it's a good
Yes.
program. So thanks for your work in that.
Thank you. It's very needed, and it is a great facility. I'm very impressed with what the facilities crew and the architects have done to get that space ready, and we've got 2 other spaces in there, phase 2 and 3, that we'll hope to have finished up by this time next year. As this classes progress, they'll move into those other phases. So, yeah, thank you.
Danny, Mayor, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Then we'll come back.
So I was able to attend the ribbon cutting at the nursing program as well, and I would say to our benefit that you were very well highly spoken of by the Board of Regents folks that we talked to. So kudos to you on that. I studied geography a little bit, and you mentioned that there's a state around here that in 6 years, north, south, east, west?
Yeah, one of those directions.
One of
Yeah.
those directions, okay.
I used to work in the state, I can put it that way. That gets it down to 2.
Come on.
I just want to say thank you for the presentation, but I'm incredibly thankful for the University of Northern Iowa and the work that you do. I do want to give a little shout out to, he's not here anymore, but we had Noah for 2 years as our student liaison to the city council. And I just feel like, I mean, Noah himself was so valuable to us. He was well-spoken, very thoughtful, wasn't afraid to speak up. And so I just wanted to give him a little shout out, but I wanted to make sure that I also gave the plug, and maybe it's on its way. I know school just started, but I hope we get another student liaison. And it was nice that he was with us for 2 years. I know that can't always happen, but it was nice that we had 2 years to build a relationship with him.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that asset, I guess, that we have from the university.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning Noah in that program. Thank you for having a liaison. It has meant a lot to the students. I know Noah thought a lot of it, but everybody that was on NISG, Northern Iowa Student Government, was appreciative of the feedback that he'd bring from city council back to them, and that he would listen to them and bring those things forward. So thank you for having that available. The NISG is in the process of identifying who that liaison will be and hopefully have that in place fairly soon. It is early in our semester and just getting started, but hopefully we can have that in place very, very soon. But Thank you.
Thankfully, I think Noah's been continuing to do his good work, trying to get the new person
Yes,
coached into coming, so.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yep.
President Nook, I just want to say thank you again for the invitation for the ribbon cutting for the nursing program. I've had the ability to view that in my professional life and in the council life as well. And what an added benefit to the state and to the community. And I think Ms. Kurtz is going to do a wonderful job running that program. And you are truly blessed to have that, and we are as well in the community. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and thanks you for mentioning Nancy Kurtz. She really is what made this work, right? You can come up with all the ideas you want and say, here's a beautiful space, but until somebody comes in and starts bringing the people in and can recruit the students and can put a curriculum in place that really makes a difference and is practice-based so these nurses are ready to hit the ground running the minute they graduate, that's a special person. We were really, really fortunate to have Nancy step up and say, I'd like to be a part of this. Her expertise, her experience really does shine and show as she took this job on. So yeah, we got incredibly fortunate to have her step forward and lead this effort. So thank you very much.
President Nook, thank you for speaking to us. And speaking of Noah, you know, he was very passionate about the Hill and, you know, supported the work that we were doing to, you know, better that area. Do you have any kind of perception of a potential partnership with the university and the city, or any ideas that have come out of the progress that we're starting to make here and how maybe we can work together on that project?
Yeah, maybe not specific that project, but I think the thing that I have seen over the 7 years that I've been here is a willingness to partner between the city and the university, and the recognition in particular of the special place that the Hill, not just the business district, but the community around it has. It has always been one of my goals to make sure that the university is connected, and the Hill is connected to the downtown in particular, partly because, yes, I'd love to have our students get down here and take advantage of the downtown and be able to take advantage of the Hill. There's differences in what's available, but I also want to have the people that live down here, there's a lot of people that live in the downtown district, to be able to easily move up to the university, and especially the Hill. You know, the Hill is located in a place that, with the right facilities there, would make it very easy for people that are at an event at the Gallagher Blue Dorn, that are at an event at the Dome or in the McLeod, to take advantage of those facilities that are at the Hill and to use the park that's there. We've got this beautiful Searly Boulevard, right? And to be able to, the new Main Street and the way it's put together, and thank you for the little campanile out there. Those are all things that really help tie our city together, right? And make it clear that the community, one, is here in part because of the university, but the university is here because of this community, right? You look at the history of this university, and the one thing that's very, very clear is we came about because this community was committed to kids back in the 1860s, when we said we've got a bunch of veterans, kids that are orphaned. What are we going to do? And out of that ended up growing a university, right? That's an amazing story that we should all be proud of. But it's because we've always worked together, right? The community built the original orphanage that became the university. We've continued to work together. You look at the Gallagher Blue Dorn, that happened because people gave us money to build it, right? They could recognize if it was on the university campus, it would draw people. If it was on the university campus, there'd be people around it that could make these things happen. And so we built that with private money from this community. And that doesn't happen a lot of places. I've been on campuses in many states around Iowa. There's no other regional campus in the state of Iowa that has a dome. There's around the states around that has a dome, that has an arena like the McLeod Center, that has a Gallagher Blue Dorn Performing Arts Center with 1,600 seats, opera-style seating. They'll have a Strayer Wood, wonderful facility. It's not a Gallagher. It doesn't attract the national and international acts. It doesn't bring that level of respect to the community that we've got from the Gallagher Blue Dorn and from the Dome. So it really is a special place, and it's been done by the people here in the community and the cooperation the university has had from the people here in the community. So thank you for that. And we look forward to continuing that and working with the Hill, working with other developments to make sure that we understand how our students will take advantage of those and how people in the community can use them to access the university and the services that are around it. So thank you.
In case anybody's wondering, the Searly roundabout is now open.
It is missing a clock face, though.
That's coming. That's coming.
So,
It's
but
not finished
I'm
yet.
told it's almost there, but I also thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, just a quick one to say thank you, because I know there's a lot of great things happening right now, and a lot of times people think it's an overnight success. That happens in 10 years.
Yeah.
So a lot of work's gone into making these projects happen, and they're all happening at the same time, it seems like. So just thank you guys for keeping an eye on the long term and investing here.
Yep, thank you. A lot of progress left to go. We got to get to 13,000. Yep, thanks very much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 2, discussion of Cedar Falls Economic Development Corporation contract. So I'll kind of kick some things off here. Wanted to bring this to the committee because I know we've had a lot of conversations, tried to work with everyone to kind of see where everyone's thoughts were on this, and it seemed like it was better to just get everyone together for a conversation on it. There was no clear consensus. I know there's been some of the concerns that some of the group has brought up, a lot of opportunities that have happened as well over the last couple of years from the work, but also just recently with some of the questions about the contract, with how it relates for some of the nonprofit status and those things. So wanted to really make a chance to say there's been a lot of good work done. And I think this group's had a lot of conversation about, okay, what's that relationship look like going forward? What are the outcomes? And just wanted to give a chance for us to, for today, the goal really is not to get into the weeds of a contract, anything there, but just what's the direction everyone would like to take with a potential contract, how we review that, put that together. And I know we have Executive Director Jim Brown here for the group to answer any questions. And otherwise, I will open it up for discussion from the council.
I think, Mr. Mayor, if you wouldn't mind giving me a little rundown on our current situation for clarity, since I think a lot of us are in the know, but we don't currently have a contract that's covering this period of time, right? The original contract has lapsed at this point, correct?
Correct. Okay. So the original contract's lapsed. We've been discussing an ongoing the next contract based on conversations with everybody. Could tell there wasn't a clear consensus on the direction we wanted to take with that. Some concerns about what are we getting for it, what are the outcomes we're expecting, some of the technicalities of the contract with the nonprofit status that I believe has been a chance to get shared with everyone. And so I think really for this discussion is more so just that what's the direction everybody wants to take to have us bring back a contract right now with some of the concerns about the status. Is that something we want to wait till that nonprofit status is figured out? That's kind of what I want to do is, because I know everyone's had a lot of different feelings on this. And
Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I have a question for Mr. Rogers. Can we have a contract and provide funds if there is not the nonprofit status?
Yes, but the city's policy on that definitely demonstrates a preference for nonprofits. And it gets particularly challenging when in our public service to private entities contracts, we're pretty strict on accounting for funds received from city and other sources and how they're spent to make sure that the city gets sort of the most bang for its buck. And a tax issue would be a challenge to overcome, I guess.
thank you, Attorney Rogers.
Mr. Holbaker?
He's ceding the floor to you.
Well, I think you kind of asked the question that I was going to ask. I guess my feeling is that is sort of the overriding preference. The other thing about is, Mr. Rogers, I think I might be correct that there has to be that ultimate transparency when you have that 501c3 status as far as access to books and tax filings and that sort of thing. And the absence of that, that wouldn't be true.
Right.
Okay.
I think that's a value of being a nonprofit plus qualify for 501c3
Right.
tax exempt status is the transparency.
Okay.
And just to give one clarification quick, if I can, they are working on the status, have filed with the IRS. There are some lapses in the filings, so they plan to have that back in place. But there is a pending period of waiting to see when that will come back. It's been filed for, I believe, saw some of that, but there's not a current designation from the IRS for it.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
So I guess my perception of the current situation is, yes, that this nonprofit status is very important. And from what I understand, it's, one of the main purposes of the CFEDC is to hold this status to help with folks who are interested in developing. I also think, obviously, a really important aspect of an economic development group is creating those business relationships with folks in our community. And I think that the CFEDC has done a good job of that. I think personally, I would like to see a bit more progress on specific projects, things that, we as the city have kind of said, this is what we would like for you to take charge on. And I think if that's not the case or that's not possible, then maybe we need to look at our role and if we need to take some of those things back or what that would look like. I do want to proceed with a contract for this year, but I think that we need to kind of keep a closer eye on the progress that's made specifically this year, and then kind of revisit it, because I think, just the lapse in the status is concerning to me, along with some other things.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor.
Thank you. I guess the obvious thing, want to get the nonprofit status in order, the 990, and Secretary of State, the business entities that are listed for officers doesn't appear to be correct. Some simple things like that. But probably the biggest concern that I have is how the organization fits in with Grow Cedar Valley, the city's own economic development, and how much of an overlap do we have, synergies of working together. I think we should avoid the overlap and that sort of thing, because it's just redundancy that costs us on that. And then if how much is the CFEDC viewed as a political action committee? That's a concern there. If that is the area that they want to be involved in, they should be registered with that and that sort of thing. So those are concerns that I have. If we can get these things in order, then we can work towards a contract of some sort. That all fits.
And then the just political activism piece, is that more so just out of a concern of just actions or activities being more kind of geared toward lobbying versus development activities? Or
it's very regimented in what you can or can't do, and especially if you're taking donations from people and the perception is that they're lobbying, they have to report that as a PAC, Political Action Committee. There's reports that you go to the state for that. So that can be looked into.
Because I would say, I think that, there's some technicalities there of what's lobbying. So, but I think if I'll just take your concerns as just wanting to make sure the work's focused on development in the community, not political lobbying.
Yeah, because if you do political lobbying, you have to state that, show where the contributions are going, report the contributions, those sorts of things.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep.
I think as I kind of think through this a little bit, there's probably some information that not everybody's privy to. We've had a conversation, but I haven't talked with others to get their take on it. But the way I see it, there's a few different options. We could kind of stay the course that we have now. This contract has lapsed with this entity. They're still going to exist. They still work. We'll also have the benefit of Grow Cedar Valley working alongside Shane as well. That's an option, to just continue as we are. Another option would be to reinstate a contract specifying what we're looking for. The hesitancy I have with that option is that we've specified in the past 3 years this fledgling idea that grew into some good relationship building and some good contact building. We just never heard back exact metrics. And then as I look at a comparison, the metrics that we're receiving from Shane and from Grow Cedar Valley were just disparate. So I'd love to make sure that that was something that we specified, but I'm of the opinion that we specified it well last time, and we didn't get that return on our investment that we were seeking. That's just my take on it. A third option may be that as I've evolved my concept of this need, we're all for economic development. We know we need it, and we want to entrust it to subject matter experts that are above, that can advise. I've evolved a perception there that perhaps we need to discuss this at goal setting to see if we would add additional staff to the city's direct economic development, adding to the staff that works with Shane and the staff here to see that we could potentially do something there. So I think as I've looked at this, that would be my preference, is that we would discuss at goal setting, because that's where we talk about where the budget might move, to add staff for this exact need, knowing that what we're paying for Gross Cedar Valley and potentially for CFEDC or others is not on par with what we would have to lay out to add staff. It'd certainly be a bigger spend, but then there'd also be a little more of that, not just accountability, that sounds like a dirty word when I use it that way, but that we'd have some touch point directly within city staff to avoid any appearance of a lobbying arm or things of that nature. That wouldn't happen if it's city staff. So I guess that'd be my preference, is that we potentially take this topic up at goal setting and see if it is something that we need to shift and add a contract back in, or potentially add staff. I'm open to others' thoughts on that idea.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
I'm not, I am okay with, I think maybe I'm out of the loop, but there's been discussion on a contract. I'm fine with, if we need to tweak a contract or whatever we need to do to get everybody to feel comfortable. I still feel, going back to when this discussion started, which I can't remember, I think it was 3 years ago or so, I still am in the belief that this is a good tool for our community. At that time, what sold me was, okay, I'm not an expert on developing anything. I can hardly develop my front yard. But we are blessed to live in a community with folks that have done and continue to do big things. And we have areas in our community that are wonderful areas, but we want to have smart growth and development. And so I was excited when that topic of having a local EDC came up. It was explained to me that can open doors. Many communities have economic development groups, and it can open doors for different connections, maybe different funding, things like that. The other thing that correct me if I'm wrong, but it was also sold to me at the time that I thoroughly bought and believe that this can be a good tool as far as a group that goes out and advocates and maybe negotiates in a way that the city or Gross Cedar Valley aren't doing or aren't able to do. So I still believe in that part of it. So I am okay with whatever we need to do to get to what's comfortable for the group. I also don't, I would like to just proceed with getting back on track. I do feel like the nonprofit status is important. I think that if the process has been started with the state and people follow up, it tends to go, I don't want to say quickly, but they do get it done down there. So I would like that back in place, but I am okay with keeping this relationship that we've had. I do believe that there are different factors over the past few years. I mean, I think relationships have been established. It's not a utopia around here, like there's been some different thoughts and opinions. So I'm looking forward to a bright future. I hope we don't get rid of this tool. I hope we work to make it better. Because I think that's what was the thought from the beginning, was that we wanted the best for our community. So that's it.
Mm-hmm. I do want to add that in just discussions with everyone, I think everyone's been supportive of the goal of economic development and supporting our business community, those that are investing in this work, and making sure to continue growing our community. So I think that was why one reason I wanted to have this conversation is I never really got a sense of hesitancy from anybody on we need to support this type of work. It was really just looking at specifically this contract, the outcomes, what are we expecting for out of it. And I do think in past years, there wasn't always a clearly defined, here's specifically what we're asking for from this relationship and what we're expecting. And I think that's something we can do a lot more, defining whether those outcomes, whether those KPIs. And so I do think I've heard from this group that everyone is supportive of the concept. It's just trying to figure out what's the best way to make sure we continue to support that.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
if I insinuated that somebody's not, that's not my intention. My intention, though, is I think the way we get there, maybe there's different opinions there. I also recognize that there is usually a monetary thing connected with this. So, like, I'm not looking to rip the carpet out from anybody. I would like to get to a place where we're all comfortable with, and let's move forward. I don't want to have halfway through the year conversations if we can avoid that. Like, let's write our expectations down, make them clear, be adults, and move forward.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
what a great opportunity if we have a contract that lapsed. Well, really what I'm hearing from the group here is that there's an underlying belief that we either didn't have something spelled out clearly enough in a previous contract, whether we didn't have metrics, or we'd like that agreement to look different. Well, we have that opportunity to do that now. So I do view that as a positive. The point on the nonprofit status lapsing as well, I understand what the concern is. I do. My understanding, and Mr. Brown's here, maybe he can elaborate further. My understanding is that you've at least taken steps to rectify that. Do you have a sense, timeline? I don't know if this is a state question or a federal question, and I don't doubt that both of those bodies probably move quite slowly. But do you have a sense of when this might be resolved?
Jim, if you'd like to come up.
Can I ask a quick question, just for clarity on that? It's not the nonprofit status, it's the 501c3 status that was lost, not the nonprofit status.
Thanks for the
right?
clarification.
Right.
To your question, Mr. Latta, they're behind at the IRS, according to our CPA, and so I think they said something, maybe I mentioned that in my synopsis, 8 to 9 months before we should hear back from our reinstatement.
And how far back does the lapse go?
Well, our CPA, our current one, who I've mentioned is there on First Street, caught it earlier this year because there was the 990 filed by that group, and that's when it sort of came full circle. And they said, well, you have the technicalities here of the C3 being, or C4, excuse me, being revoked. So that kicked things into gear to have then the 1024 sent, which is our request to reinstate. And since we had this status and it was lost because of the technicality, the CPA just thought there was not a problem to get reinstated from where we were before.
And Mr. Hawbaker referred to a concern about maybe transparency with the book. Was it you? I'm sorry if it wasn't, or maybe it was Dustin. I apologize. But
No, it was.
transparency with the books if we were to give money.
With the nonprofit status.
Absence of that.
Including the, right, and the tax status.
Are there assurances that the CFEDC can give that we would still have that level of transparency? Is that a fair question to ask?
I think it's totally fair. And I can tell you that if you know, or if you know, generally speaking, the makeup of our board of directors, they get monthly financials from our CPA, sort of money in, money out. They are also, and assure you they can be trusted, the individuals that are on that board, and that they're spending the money as it's intended. So I trust them. I hope you folks could too, just in that vein. But the 990 is literally showing, it's a lot different than our personal taxes and such. There's no deductions and there's no, but listing the different officers was way back from when we initially started the inception of it. I think my wife was a secretary, and until we put things forward, and then we had board members and we all became more formal and moved forward from there.
Thank you.
And just speaking, I think from my side, or our involvement, have never had concerns about the transparency of the organization's financials. The budget's been given, so the access to it was never really, I think, questions, more the technicality at this point of the filing.
Mr. Mayor, throw in a comment. For the benefit of the state level, Secretary of State, you're active and you did the biannual report on schedule. So from those eyes, you're good, other than maybe updating the officers, from what I can see.
I believe so.
So.
Yeah. And Councilman Cruz, you mentioned, I think, two things there: the distinction between Gross Cedar Valley and the CFEDC. Early on in those discussions, a couple of you were a part of those discussions, and one of the very keen ideas or mindsets that we had, and very much a lot of conversation with Carrie at the time, was we don't want duplication between the two organizations. Grow Cedar Valley deals with state leads and brings them forward. Lisa is great. Talk to Bob Seymour and probably Shane. When a company comes in, Shane's very good with those metrics of what you need. If you have so much utility, that's how much you need, and all those sorts of great things. We are strictly the economic development piece of Cedar Falls. So we haven't, aside from maybe some minor work early on we did when there was the Destination Iowa dollars that were available. We worked very closely with Grow Cedar Valley to have that water connection from Cedar Falls to Waterloo. Ended up not working out for us because we weren't quite ready from the point of turning a submission in. But that, I think what's getting confused, and it got confused the last couple of times, is when we first started 3 years ago, we didn't know what we didn't know. We also knew, though, that we needed to be separate and unique from Grow Cedar Valley while also partnering at times, as I just mentioned. And so in that process, it was suggested to me to, let's just use Grow Cedar Valley's contract. Let's get you guys rolling. Let's get you guys some seed money and keep it going. I think I asked last time, but the timing didn't work out. We need to change our contract because it's not, we don't do what Grow Cedar Valley does. And in fact, as I mentioned in my synopsis sent to you earlier, you know, those types of things that we have done, from the housing assessment to housing incentives to all those other factors, Grow Cedar Valley wouldn't do that. That's not their purview. That's almost exactly what an economic development corporation would do. So that's that comparison. And the lobbying effort, we hosted candidates, many of you who are running at the space, at co-working space. CFEDC has never received any money towards a PAC. Lobbying efforts, if that was done by anyone, would have been done by any one of the 25 to 30 board members on their own, just talking to people or attending various events that were held for the candidates at the time. So it's not a PAC whatsoever. The lobbying efforts is not whatsoever on behalf of the CFEDC. Very, very careful with that. It ruins that status real quick if that happens. And can I mention one more other thing too, if that's okay?
Yeah. Go ahead, Jim.
It was mentioned the return on investment. First, I did check my math with Shane today. I think I mentioned in my synopsis last week that the city has averaged $50,000 a year in the public-private partnership support, and it's actually $40,000. Very much welcomed, and we very much appreciate that. In fact, that really just got us started, as I mentioned 3 years ago. But let me mention a few things as I think the Board of Directors sees. The EDC is working on strategic, long-term, robust projects, and we need that collaboration from you folks. Oh, excuse me, Ms. Chrisman, we need that input to make sure we're on track. And I think we've gotten a good working relationship as the elected has changed this last January between the mayor and City Administrator Ron and Shane. But we need that from you folks. If there's any missteps there, why is it a surprise if we don't know about it? We need that synergy to work with you folks. And I mentioned the $40,000 per year investment. The initial investment by the city was $75,000, and it was more of the startup. I remember a councilwoman who's not here any longer just said, we need this for the startup, we need this for the startup. And that was used in part by the CFEDC when we took combined funds invested in the housing need assessment. This actually pointed to the problems we did have. As scientific as you can get, here's the problems that challenges we have, which technically boils down to 1,000 dwellings by 2030 is what we need. And it led us to the Housing Trust Fund, something the city has never done. We've been a donut hole amongst 9 counties that not have a housing trust fund. Kudos to this group and the mayor for moving that forward very quickly. And it's time, finally, as we asked, or we mentioned 3 years ago, to return tax dollars that Cedar Falls is sending to Des Moines to now come back to Cedar Falls. And that, all in all, will be in the tune of roughly $200,000 a year that we can assist the city with housing valuations and new home buyers and down payment assistance. Exactly sort of the kind of rollout an EDC would take a look at, a result that I think we can move collectively on, and we have in some areas. But also, I would think that would be a pretty strong return on investment. It's a $100 million problem. I mean, we need everybody at the table on this one to get through that challenge long term, you know, and if I brag too much or push too hard, I won't apologize on behalf of my board of directors. We need this in the city that we love for the future. So thanks.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
Any discussion, council? And so at this point, what I've got kind of here is took down some of the concerns everyone has based on activities, reporting, goals, outcomes, KPIs, those types of things. Don't really have exact clarity yet on with the status, how we want to move forward with that. We can start to review it internally and look at what are the options for, like if that's, what do you think? Does everyone, I think that's the one thing kind of looking for consensus on is that something you feel we need to wait for, or is that something we feel comfortable we can look at drafting a contract for this year, knowing that that status will be pending?
I'm fine with moving forward with a contract, but to Mr. Rogers' advice, it's after we make sure, even though I trust the board and I trust Mr. Brown and that, but I think from the legal side of things, I want to make sure we're doing the right things there. But as far as moving forward and with the contract, I'm all for that.
Just to clarify, is that saying comfortable with the contract, but you're going to want to see some update on that status before payment?
Correct.
Okay.
Because I believe that's the advice we got from Mr. Rogers, but it's a lot, had a lot of legal words in there, but that seemed like the advice you were giving us.
It's council's decision.
That was the best legal.
That's
Yeah, that's the best legal advice, yeah.
But you at least gave the advice we can make that decision legally. Any other thoughts on that from council?
I mean, Mr. Mayor?
Yep. Go ahead.
I want the best for the community, and I don't want to put the city at any risk. I guess unless there's a great concern, I'm of the opinion that, I mean, it's still a nonprofit, right? That's the tax exempt part that we're.
Well, it's just not recognized currently by the IRS as a nonprofit.
Right.
It's still filed as a nonprofit, and will have to maintain all those records, file everything. And they filed that as a part of this process to get that recognition back.
Okay.
It's just currently they're not recognized by the IRS, which the contract we have does explicitly state must show IRS proof, and I think that's what Attorney Rogers is discussing was kind of the preferred, making sure we have that proof of status. But they are still technically a nonprofit, 501c4.
Mr. Mayor.
Excuse me. One second. Do you have anything else?
No,
Okay. Councilor Cruz.
I guess, excuse me. I guess the way I would look at it, the nonprofit status is in limbo. It'd be a good way to describe it in my mind, because it's filed for but not finished and approved and in good order.
So would that be?
I would, well, to expand upon that, I would be holding off using Mr. Rogers' advice and working in the world that I work in, where black and white situations, you can't be in limbo with something that's as important as this. I mean, work can be done in the background to do things within the idea that, holding yourself as an active nonprofit isn't accurate, though it's applied for. It's in limbo. That's how I see it, so thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I know we've got limited time here tonight, but a couple of things I want to just make sure that we all are in agreement on and get them out of the way. There's nothing personal involved in any of my comments that are coming up here. I like Jim. I want economic development for the city. I just think that we're looking at the results and the deliverables here, and maybe I'm looking at it from a weird perspective. This is our time to talk about this as a group, so I'm going to bring up a couple things that maybe not everybody talked about. But I don't know how to do that without it becoming an employee evaluation when the CFEDC has one employee. All outcomes of the work of the CFEDC have been one employee. That's kind of the thing that's disparate in my mind. The genesis of these contracts started with Gross Cedar Valley saying, hey, we'd love to be able to budget for our next year so that we know what to count on. Can we count on you for a set amount instead of being incentivized reimbursement every year? So these both came up at that same time to say, okay, that'd be nice. Why don't we have a set dollar amount so that we know what we can expect from the city for our partnership going forward? In those initial contracts, they were exactly the same contract. And so the metrics that were required of both were the same. Even last year, there were some conversations about changing the contract, and we discussed that. The contract that was adjusted wasn't what was put in place. So the metrics that we were owed, as far as the numbers that we saw in growth in both employees, job opportunities, contact growth, things of that nature, I don't have the list memorized, wasn't delivered, and what was delivered wasn't delivered in a timely fashion. I don't know how we can say we want economic development and we want to make sure that we can keep tabs on all these kinds of things, and we're good with just letting all this happen where it hasn't happened in a good fashion. If we were comparing apples to apples, we would say this isn't what we want to continue. We're going to go a different direction. So I just wanted to make sure, am I crazy or am I the only one that's seeing this as if we did not get what we contracted for in the first time? That's why we let it lapse. That's why there wasn't a contract renewal right on our doors at the middle of the year when the contract was up. So correct me if I'm wrong here, but we didn't get what we paid for 3 years running with this particular attempt. We still need economic development. We do need to revisit this contract. But am I the only one that sees it that way? I'm open to being corrected. I just haven't heard anybody else dialogue about those undelivered promises.
Well, I'd say from Mr. Brown's defense, if you will, talking about the housing trust fund, the housing assessment, the things that are being done that maybe don't give you a check back, here's a return on, on your investment. It's more in the betterment of the community as a whole and filling the gap that we're not able to do right now with Shane or not able to do with Cedar Valley. So that's not that I don't completely disagree with you, but I disagree with a lot of that. But I think there's good things being done. It's just hard always to put here's a dollar amount. But when you know of the work that's being done, I think there's value there.
Mr. Mayor, I try not to agree with Dustin too often, but I do think that, like, for example, the Housing Trust Fund, that wasn't just the CFEDC. And I think that that's where I kind of struggle with, like you mentioned, the metrics. We've obviously talked about, wanting these very specific deliverables. And I do think that in some ways, Grow Cedar Valley or even, Shane with the city, they are more fortunate because the work that they do, it does lend itself to that. And again, like at Grow Cedar Valley, they have a large staff. They've been doing it for a long time. It's definitely not a new thing. But, I sometimes feel like it is the same things referenced. Like these are our 5 successes. But it's a new thing. So sometimes I get it, and other times, I go back to what Dustin is saying, that it does kind of feel like we're not getting what we're paying for. But again, I don't want to just cut it and say it's not working, but like I think that there needs to be some very specific asks. And I know that we have talked about returning to the incentive, saying, okay, this is, like, if you request, you can come to the council and request specific funding. We would like to have this study done. This is how it will benefit the community. It's going to cost this much money. And maybe that's how we use the funding. But I think then there's some concern that this organization will not continue, again, going to what Dustin said, because it's one single employee, and I think much of this funding does go to that employee's salary. And so then I don't know what that looks like if it isn't just something that is paid for. I don't know. I too, again, I agree with Dustin. It's hard to not make it feel personal. Mm-hmm. So I don't want it to be perceived that way.
Okay. Thank you, Counselor. I'm only hesitating because I know you've got some notes. And
I'm just thinking. So we're going to have the opportunity to talk about this again.
And I do think for today, knowing we're kind of out of time, I feel like I've at least got enough initial feedback from everyone to start moving forward on some other conversations, working with staff, working with CFEDC, and drafting out some of these concepts, addressing, I think, a lot of the concerns we've heard, some of the structural things. But for the sake of the night, then, is there any other, just before we close the conversation, any other thoughts that?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
I guess I'd like a little clarity. I hear different people saying, yeah, we want to do a contract. But as I listen more and I think into something like my world, if my securities license is revoked, similar to the IRS saying the nonprofit status is revoked, as you found out when you researched it, I cannot talk about securities to a client. If my insurance license is revoked for Minnesota or another state, I cannot do business in that state, zero. I can't solicit, I can't do anything. So if you look at that, if that's the way I would look at it, and I do, post haste, if that's the right word, to say get this nonprofit in order. And I helped a number of years ago reinstate a nonprofit that had lost its status, and it was several months, but I don't know, things change obviously. But and a little side note, we talked about the housing assessment. When that was presented, I pointed out that one of the components that was missing in looking at the housing in the community was the student housing. And the university would be wanting to know more details on how the housing assessment would affect and help student housing. Another component that was missing, mobile home parks, and one of our previous counselors brought that up, that's a component of the community. People use mobile home parks to live in and along with the students. So things are brought forward that were good, but things need to be further dug into for housing. And to speak to Dustin's points, the accountability, if things haven't been achieved and proven, then it has to be written into the contract more clearly, possibly, when the nonprofit status is figured out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Councilman Cruz brings up a good point, and I asked that very question: can we still operate as we are in this limbo? And he said you would be basically they would be designated as temporary status. So any sort of communications, whether it be an invoice or whether it be any sort of communications, it's a temporary status from his perspective.
Okay.
From whose perspective?
Pardon me?
Whose perspective?
The CPAs. That's what he told
Oh,
me.
the CPA, okay.
Okay, any other?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on a contract or not a contract, but just another question for Attorney Rogers. Ms. Chrisman referenced potentially a base and then incentives and having to approach council for specific projects. If that were to occur and this nonprofit, again, hasn't been solidified one way or another, same heartburn if someone comes and asks council for money in that scenario, or no?
So I'm not sure I quite understand it, but I just want to make sure we understand that the nonprofit status remains. We've got
Right,
a
okay, so the tax exempt status, whatever.
tax exempt
Right.
status.
So
And
if
so,
that group were to come and ask council for funds for a specific project, and that had not been cleared up yet,
so here's where I am at that. I would want to know a lot more about the restrictions on anything, if there is any restrictions at all on their activities and accounting, before I would give council advice on something like that. I'd want to know, I'd gather up the CPAs and the tax attorneys and figure out exactly what this really means, because I don't know at this point.
appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Roger. Any last thoughts, discussion? Okay, well, again, I'll take this information back, work with staff, and try to work on bringing something back that we can start looking at and start getting some feedback from you guys. So, okay, we will then look to adjourn our committee of the whole meeting. We'll take a short, let's see, about, what time is it here? We've got 7:09. Is 5-minute break long enough for everyone to quickly drink? Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break, and we'll be back here at 7:15 for the regular city council meeting.